Welcome to Falcon Sledge. I'm Austringer, and today we're going to be talking about HOTAS, or Hands-on Throttle and Stick. This control style is most frequently used in modern fighter aircraft, but in gaming it's often used in space sims as well. In fact, there's a lot of disagreement between space sim groups whether or not HOTAS or HOSAS, hands-on stick and stick, otherwise called dual stick, has any advantage over HOTAS. Spoiler, it does, if only slightly. We're going to call this the State of HOTAS 2020 mid-range. You might ask, why is there no low-range HOTAS list? Well, I try only to talk about things that I have a good amount of knowledge on, and since I would never buy a sub-$100 HOTAS system, I haven't spent much time with them. If your budget doesn't allow for a mid-range HOTAS, there are a number of super budget videos out there that I'd recommend checking out. There are even 3D printed solutions if you have the skills to build your own. So let's get started. Our fourth place entrance for our mid-range roundup is the Logitech, formerly Stateof X52. This stick has been around for almost 15 years now, and it is a stick I've used for 13 years. It was a reliable option for the time and performed decently for what it cost me in 2005. I paid $129 on discount. Unfortunately, on the new market, the prices are much higher in January 2021. There are two different offerings for the X52, the base model and the Pro. The Pro offers some additional metal parts, 2 Hall sensors for the X and Y axis, double springs on the gimbal, and a bit of a different look. Some of the features of the X52 include 2 4-way hat switches, 4 buttons, including one protected button that I thought looked really cool 15 years ago, but today strikes me as being a bit lame. That's just my opinion. The X52 also has a 3-way mode switch, a pinky clutch switch that can also be used as a regular button, and finally 3 2-way momentary switches. One of the positives about the gimbal is that it uses a single spring, which means that no matter which direction that you're pushing the stick, it has the same resistance. This is a bit of a contrast from the spring per axis arrangement where you'll feel a higher spring rate when pushing against 2 different axes. And a good example is when you're pushing into any of the corners, you're going to be pushing against 2 separate axes. The throttle of the X52 series is a single axis unit with a built-in mouse pointer, 6 buttons, one of which can be used as a clutch, a 4-way hat switch, an encoder, and 2 rotating axes. There is a tensioner on the left side of the throttle to adjust tension. Some of the downsides of the X52 is that the non-Pro version has a really inaccurate set of Hall sensors that are particularly inaccurate in the center, where you need accuracy the most. I found it very challenging to attempt to perform a mid-air refueling session a few years ago with my X52. I was eventually able to accomplish it, but it was a really difficult task, even with modifications, such as adding neodymium magnets on either side of the Hall sensor to increase that sensitivity. Unfortunately, that modification made it far too sensitive, even with curves. In second place, we have the Thrustmaster T16000M FCS. This stick has been the go-to bang-for-your-buck stick for some time in the mid-range segment. It utilizes a single spring gimbal that uses a single large outer spring, providing a linear and constant resistance. The stick has molded side panels that can be swapped so that the T16000M can be used as a right or left-handed stick. It has 3 buttons on the face of the stick, a single trigger, and a single hat switch. It has 12 buttons on the base of the stick, a throttle slider, and the best part about the T16000M is that it uses the same Hall sensor as its older brother, the Thrustmaster Warthog HOTAS. The sensor is high quality and very accurate. A big positive for the T16000M FCS is the throttle. It is a slide type throttle, which is not my favorite type, but where it shines is its controls and layout. On the side, it has 2 4-way hat switches, an 8-way POV, and a button. On the front, it has a 4-way analog stick with center click, a 2-way switch, 2 buttons, and a rocker with 2 axes. On the left side, there is a rotating slider axis. All in all, it's a great throttle with a ton of features. There are some downsides to the T16000M. Many users report having issues with the twist axis going out or having issues. Many of these users have gone to using the rocker on the throttle for rudder operations. There are some issues with the throttle becoming sticky, and there are some great mods out there to help resolve that issue to keep it nice and smooth. You might ask why you don't see the TCA and quadrant in this list. Well, HOTAS are designed for you to fly with your hands on the throttle and stick. The TCA is more of the airliner style, where the throttle handle itself isn't really designed to always have your hands on it. So it really isn't a HOTAS per se. Taking first place in our mid-range HOTAS roundup, we have the X56, originally designed and produced by Stateof, just like the X52. This HOTAS has a bit of a love-hate relationship with its users. On one hand, it has some really great features. It has much more traditional layout and styling in comparison to the X52, which is more of a sci-fi styled stick. There are no goofy flip covers on buttons, and there are a lot of functionality that was just not available on the X52. The X56 stick has 3 4-way hats and 1 button on the face, a dual-stage trigger, a button and lever on the front, an analog stick on the left side with a center click. It uses a similar gimbal to the X52, but with the ability to swap out springs a bit easier. There isn't much information available about the sensors used in the X56 other than it being claimed to be a 16-bit sensor, similar to that used on the T16000M. The X56 throttle has an abundance of functionality, the most available on any throttle in this segment. There are 2 throttle axes that can be locked together, a mode switch, 6 two-way momentary switches, and 2 rotational axes on the base of the throttle. On the right-hand side, you have a button, a slider, 2 hat switches, 2 rotating axes, and an analog stick with a center click. On the front of the throttle, you have 2 buttons, a 2-way switch, and a 2-way encoder. The predecessor to the X56, the X55, is a similar design but lacks the analog mini sticks. There is currently no offering in this price point that has more options than the X56 does. It's not all fun and games in the X56 world though. There's been numerous QA and engineering related problems with these sticks, from wiring issues causing throttles to fail, to stiction issues in the throttle axis, to power problems requiring powered USB hubs in order to function at all, and a very high return rate, reportedly up to 33% from Amazon. There are reports even from 2020, long after the updates made by Logitech, of even new units having both thumbstick and primary axis that are all over the place and not accurate, especially in the center of the axis. There's also issues with ergonomics for the stick. The thumb controls on the face of the stick are centered rather than being oriented slightly to the left of center like most other sticks. This makes reaching for those rightmost controls on the face to be very uncomfortable. On the other side of the coin, there are a good number of people who have used their X56 sticks for many years with no problems. Or maybe the problems didn't affect their play in a way that they noticed. It's hard to know. It may have its ups and downs, but it's also clear that it is the largest feature set of any HOTAS under $300. We also have some honorable mentions that we could not include on the list. The first couldn't be included because the throttle modules haven't been released, and that is the Gladiator NXT modular flight control system. With a similar style of throttle that is found on the TCA, but broken down into modules which can give you a variety of controls that you can choose from to either connect to your stick or mount separately. In the end though, because it is not a standalone throttle that you would keep your hands on, it's not technically a HOTAS. Hopefully, VKB offers a true throttle for this solution. Another honorable mention would be the CH Products F16 Fighter Stick and Pro Throttle. These are good sticks that are rugged and generally of good quality. I used this setup before 2005 and it was very reliable. Unfortunately for me, mine were broken during a move and I foolishly threw them away instead of keeping them and upgrading them. The Pro Throttle has a very nice feature, at least a really nice feature for this generation of HOTAS, considering it came out in the late 90s, in that it came with an analog thumbstick, albeit a really old style one. Many people still love these HOTAS, but they are definitely showing their age. The stick itself still uses POTS, which are much less accurate than modern Hall sensors. Now down to a couple of recommendations if you want to get the most out of your money in the mid-range. If you have an X52 or X56 and you're happy with the throttle, I recommend picking up a Gladiator NXT and ditching the X52 or X56 stick. The worst part of the X52 is its gimbal, something it shares with the X56, and also the X52's sensors. This is exactly where the NXT shines over it, not to mention the additional control options and ergonomics it brings with it. If you don't have a HOTAS, or if you're just looking to buy into the mid-range segment, my current recommendation would be to purchase a VKB Gladiator NXT and pair it up with a Thrustmaster TWCS throttle, since you can't buy an X56 throttle separately. This gives you the best offering in the mid-range segment. It would be nice if we could get a best in the segment from one source, such as VKB, but it hasn't released a full throttle setup for their mid-range or high-price segment yet. Here's some final thoughts about the manufacturers in this segment. The joystick market is overall not a very big market. It's considered to be a niche market. Because of games like Star Citizen, DCS, Elite Dangerous, and Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, among others, a lot of new money has been making it into the market, and when you combine that with a certain pandemic, which shall remain nameless, reducing production, prices for these sticks has gone up significantly. I believe the prices will soon stabilize when all of this passes, but until then, prices for HOTAS are very high. Logitech acquired Stateof in 2016. Since then, other than rebranding and making a few minor changes to correct some minor issues, hasn't given any indication that they are currently working on a replacement for the flight sticks that they inherited when they acquired Stateof. Even a completely updated X56, call it an X57, with modern analog sticks, modern sensors, and an upgraded gimbal, could have wonderful effects on their lineup. A possible ray of light is that Logitech did perform a research study in 2019 asking about their players' experiences with flight sims and Logitech sticks. This can sometimes be an indicator that the company is working on new products, but we haven't heard anything since then. Thrustmaster has given some indications that they're working on some new products, but the release of the TCA, though being a new product, reuses a lot of the tech from the T16000M. Some reviews claim that the feel of the TCA is better than the T16000, but I'd really like to get a hold of a new version of both of these sticks and give them a proper review. There's no indication currently that they're working on a new flight stick products outside of this. VKB, on the other hand, seems to be targeting the mid-range in a big way with their NXT modular flight control system. They have a full throttle on the way, though no indication of whether there's going to be a mid-range solution for the throttle. The reason I talk about the different manufacturers is that when you buy into a HOTAS system, it's an investment, and sometimes it's a good idea to know if the company that you're making that investment in has a healthy line of products that you can choose from should you want to upgrade. Now that's the end of our mid-range HOTAS roundup for 2020. Please tell me what you think and leave a comment in the comment section down below. Please subscribe and help me develop this channel. Let me know if you would like to see more of this type of content, and you have a great day.